This is a sermon for October 30th, 2022, and I'm going to be reading from Luke 18, 1 to 8, and then 9 to 14. And again, I'm using the Message by Eugene Peterson for the contemporary language. Jesus told the disciples a story showing that it was necessary for them to pray consistently and never quit. He said there was once a judge who never gave God a thought and cared nothing for people. A widow in that city kept after him. "My rights are being violated. Protect me." He never gave her the time of day, but after this went on and on, he said to himself, "I care nothing what God thinks, even less what people think. But because this widow won't quit badgering me, I'd better do something and see that she gets justice." Then the master said, "Do you hear what that judge, corrupt as he is saying? So what makes you think God won't step in and work justice for God's beloved people who continue to cry out for help?" And now verses 9 through 14. He told his next story to some who were complacently pleased with themselves over their moral performance and looked down on the common people. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax man. The Pharisee posed and prayed like this: "Oh God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, crooks, adulterers, or heaven forbid, like that tax man. I fast twice a week and tithe on all my income." Meanwhile, the taxman, slumped in the shadows, his face in his hands, not daring to look up, said, "God, give mercy, forgive me, a sinner." Jesus commented, "This taxman, not the other, went home made right with God." If you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to simply be yourself, you will become more than yourself. Well, these stories are, again, like all the stories, just amazing. There's a lot in them. They're both illustrating how to pray. And if you look up Luke 18 and have them in front of you, I could ask you a question. What are the two lessons in a nutshell? Or what do the stories tell you on the surface level? Because there's always the surface level and then there's the deeper level. Well, I can answer that for myself, and you could answer it for yourself as well. The first story says both at the beginning and the end. Jesus would have told the story, and that would have been separate. But the gospel writer puts an explanation both at the beginning and at the end, so you won't miss it. Kind of hits you over the head, really, if you look at it yourself. But the nutshell lesson of the first story is never quit crying out for justice and for help. In other words, don't lose heart, don't give up, keep at it, keep at it. And the second lesson, we've got the two men that walk into the temple, the one who's very upright, moral, self-righteous, kind of a goody two-shoes. And then there's the tax collector who knows his deep vulnerability and sinfulness. And so I think the second lesson would be humble because you are human and you sin, which the first person in the story doesn't really get. The first person doesn't understand. The Pharisee doesn't understand his humility. He's not in touch with it anyway. He's definitely not in touch with his vulnerability. So the two lessons are never quit crying out for justice and help. And the second one, be humble because you are human and you sin. So those within Jesus' teachings are pretty much common sense, but I don't think common sense is always that common. But I would say that there's an underlying principle in both stories. And what would you say that is the underlying principle in both stories? What do they have in common? And what do they teach us that they have in common? What came to my mind was be human, and in prayer, trust God. So I think at base of being human, at base of being human, is that we do trust God. I think fear, if we're really in touch with it, and if we're in touch with our truest, deepest self, we're aware of fear. Both stories have fear in them. And both stories involve a lesson on being human. And I think that if we're truly human at our best, then we can lean toward trusting God. The unjust judge treated the widow with contempt. That's another thing that the two stories have in common, contempt. So the judge had contempt, treated the widow with contempt, and in the second story, we have this upright, self-righteous goody two-shoes who's treating the tax collector with contempt. How do you see contempt in our society? How do you see contempt in the church? How do you see contempt in yourself? That's the key question. We are both the Pharisee and the tax collector. We are. We're both the widow crying out for justice, and we're the judge not giving it until we're harassed into giving it. It's human nature. It's the human condition. There are unjust systems all around the world and throughout all of history. They deprive people of their rights, these unjust systems. They treat others with contempt. There are people all around the world and throughout history that look down on people. It's the worst of humanity. Have you ever treated someone else as inferior to you? I bet you if I asked if you've never done it, I wouldn't get any hands raised for people who have never treated another as inferior. It's that comparison monster, I've said. It's the push me, pull you monster. We compare ourselves with others. We lift ourselves up because we're not like those others. Thank God we're not like those others. And then we also have compared ourselves to others and said, boy, I really don't measure up. I'm nothing. I'm a worm. Neither is true. Come on. Neither one is true. You know, we learn contempt in our families from when we're young, and we learn love and compassion that doesn't look down on others in our families. I hope that we learn love and compassion. And so the question always is, which do you choose? The more insecure we are, the more fearful we are, the less we're honest about our fearfulness and insecurity, the more we choose contempt. I see it. You see it in school. You see kids that are bullies, and they are the least secure, the most fearful, and they beat up on others because they lift themselves up by doing that. So it takes persistence, much like the widow, it takes persistence to choose love and to not choose contempt. I see politicians that call others names that show contempt. Contempt is strong, and it easily breeds more contempt. And the same with hunger for outrage that we see online. Outrage sells clicks and sells ads and sells traffic online. And so I used to check and see if these outrageous claims were true. I don't anymore. I just don't even receive them. I don't get them in emails. I don't get them on social media because I have no interest. I'm not going to show contempt, and I'm going to try to choose not to show contempt. And I'm also not going to encourage outrage. And I know that we've all looked down on others, and that's the human nature. We notice what we get right, we notice what others get wrong, and we don't notice what we get wrong and what others get right. And so I love hearing about people that really get things right. And they might do it behind the scenes, and then someone says, wow, I'm grateful that they noticed that I got it right. You know, we can tend to have ego And ego, remember, is my way or the highway. And we can say, if only they were humble and modest like me, or if only they were hard working like me, or self-sacrificing, or sincere and compassionate like me. If only, then we could walk cheerfully side by side into God's future, where I'm already going. You can see the pride in that. I see groups in the United Methodist Church sometimes treating one another with contempt. Over doctrinal issues, where's the love? Where's the love and compassion? Where's the walking side by side knowing that we're all sinners? I don't know. I look for it, and I hope to find it in myself as well. People are drawn to Jesus for all kinds of reasons, mostly because he embodied love and compassion. I think people are drawn to church sometimes because they find like-minded people, and they might even share the same outrage and the same contempt. And those are birds of a feather that flock together, right? But Jesus was marked by compassion. So prayer informs life, and prayer informs the widow being persistent with a judge. And it's important not to lose heart. It's easy to give up sometimes when things feel overwhelming. So we can not lose heart and stay persistent. We can also truly bow before God and know our humility, like the tax collector. Every religion, I know some people would string me up for this, but every religion has insights into truth with a capital T. And every religion has a downside too, and maybe many downsides. And I can only speak about Christianity, Judaism, and then the meditation practices of Buddhism. I know that all three of those have great insights into truth, love, and compassion being first of all. And then I don't know about the other religions. I can't judge them. I can't tell you about them. So I accept my ignorance and I let that be. Whenever you find yourself praying, thank God I'm not like those other people, watch out. Because, well, we fall down. When I got out of the river last week, a week ago Saturday, when I got out of the river, I tripped over my paddle and fell and caught myself. I didn't hit my face on the ground, but I fell, and then I looked around to see if anyone saw me. I don't know. But you know, that's what it's like when you fall. I bruised up my shin because I fell. I wasn't watching. I wasn't being careful. But you know what? God hears us all, Pharisee and tax collector alike. God welcomes us, hears us, and gives us grace. Gives us grace. And I came across this quote. The mind is alive when it is flexible and adaptable. It can be updated, it can take new form and endure change. The mind is dead when it is fixed and immovable. It cannot absorb new ideas or thoughts. It's stiff and brittle. When we lose our ability to adapt, to move with the environment, to tolerate new beliefs, and reshape our old beliefs, our mind is at risk. The fixed mind becomes a dead relic. I think that's true in faith as well. I think we learn things all the time. So I'm not willing to have everything fixed in doctrine. It's good news that God listens to us, to our self-satisfied striving, our positioning of self above those other poor sinners, and God listens to the sincerest laments of our hearts. When we get deep down and become our most human, true self, we can share with others across divides because we know where it hurts. It's hard to admit that. You can't be on your high horse when you admit where does it hurt. When we share our stories. The last thing I want to say is that the church right now is struggling. Small churches everywhere are struggling. Probably all churches are struggling, but the small churches it's affected the most. And I think it's easy to attack, to blame, to choose a scapegoat and to lay all the blame on that scapegoat. And really, culture is changing. Our minds haven't yet adapted. We have to discern and apply wisdom to how things are changing. And we need to do it together, and we need to do it with our deepest, truest selves. And when we do that, we can pray along with Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He said, "Whatever this day may bring, your name be praised." Whatever this day may bring, and we don't know what it is, we have the freedom to choose compassion and love. Amen.